Hello, everyone. Welcome to our latest live webinar from RIoT. My name is Tom Snyder. I'm the We started RIoT about 6 years ago as an economic development focused nonprofit working in the technology space. For the last couple of weeks, we, like everyone, have been foundationally impacted by the COVID-19 crisis and an economic crisis. 2 weeks ago, we started a new live program to you experts and innovators, visionary folks that are doing interesting things in using technology towards this dual challenge of our economy and our health. Today's no different. We have some great panelists that I'm going to introduce in a moment. But briefly, for those not familiar with RIoT, our focus really economic development and job creation. We do a number of activities from convening, like we're all doing virtually today, but in our recent past, a lot of in-person convening around the United States. We operate an industry consortium of partners, about 80 or 85 corporate, university, and municipal partners that are all working together to create robust and healthy economy. But really our central point is around technology and how technologies shift business, how you just shift our economy, the ways that we make money, the solve problems, the ways that we solve, both large and challenges, which are also often market opportunities. This is no different. COVID-19 creates massive challenges, and I don't want to under the seriousness of the challenge, but it also creates incredible opportunity. RIoT last week announced a new product, R, which is where we're going to spend a lot of our time today, which is an innovation challenge, really a call to action, both in the entrepreneur community, but also among our corporate partners and citizens at large, to be a part of solving some of the challenges that are in front of us today. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but we're going to start off with a discussion with a number of partners. Before I get to that, I'll ask Caroline if you'll switch to the next slide for me. Is supported by these sponsors there are a few sponsors in particular that are already stepping forward and doing really important work towards the COVID-19 crisis. Today, Cisco has stepped forward. They've donated the technology for us to be able to speak with. We have folks that are registered actually from around. Really exciting. We have folks like Clario and Ava Labs actively working on new projects that we'll talk about in a moment, supporting the medical efforts. Organizations like Soto IP provide mentoring, NC Idea providing specific funding in this project, and others that are going to help us to put money of some entrepreneurs who can help solve interesting and new problems. So moving into the next part here, session is being recorded. It will be released as a podcast on the RIoT Underground. If you are not already a subscriber to that podcast, anywhere that podcasts on Spotify or Google Podcasts or the iTunes Store, and et cetera. But for those that are participating live, right now your microphones are muted, but we do want this session to be interactive. So as we go the two parts of this program, an initial panel discussion specifically on Mission R, please feel that you can enter questions through the chat window. Caroline Griffin on our team is going to be monitoring that box. As we see questions, we'll bring those forward and we'll ask them to the panel. We can capture it for the audio for people that are listening later. But we'll have that opportunity. But we're going to start first with a little bit of moderated discussion. So let's go ahead and move forward. We have 4 amazing here today from both the startup sector and from our own team. I could not do justice the introductions that they can do themselves. And so I'm going to let them each start by giving just a quick introduction on who they are, what their organization is, and then we'll dive right into the discussion. So Luke, let's start with you.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having us all, Tom, on this. I'm Luke Marshall, CEO of VitalFlo, and we're a digital health company focused on respiratory health. Basically, what we do is help doctors keep their asthma patients out of the ER, and do that through a set of tools for remote monitoring of patients in their home. This includes tools for measuring patient lung function. We also ask patients about their symptoms and monitor things that can trigger an asthma attack, like things in the air, both inside and outside a patient's home, through both hardware units and integrations with groups like the EPA. From a perspective, I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but we also have some interesting updates to that. Obviously, with remote monitoring and telehealth, there's a big play here in COVID-19, since there is danger to frontline healthcare workers as well as patients from being too close to one another. I'm really excited about getting into some of the discussions around that and how we can step up as an entrepreneurial community to address some of those challenges.
All right, thank you, Luke. Step over to you next, please.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I hope this conference finds everyone in good health. Denny Lewis, I came back to North Carolina after a career in the military and in business up in the Washington, D.C. area, and established something called the Defense Technology Transition Office. And what this office does is connects technology, which at the time, Department of Defense, but now it's the entire federal government, deems of interest to them, and they can transition that science and technology or commercial off-the-shelf innovation into a funded prototype within 90 days, skipping the normal federal acquisition requirements that we typically see through in the past. So it helps small businesses be able to innovate and get their innovation in front of customers with no more than a 5-page white paper or less, rather than putting out a full proposal like you might see in a SIBA or STTR. So this office helps with that. Additionally, I work for the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, and together what we try to do is help businesses grow in North Carolina, as well as connecting businesses in what we refer to as the innovation ecosystem in North Carolina to government agencies and bigger companies outside of North Carolina where there might be some teaming opportunities. So together, we provide outreach and connection to help grow our economy here in North Carolina. I look forward to hearing more about Mission R and the innovation challenges, Tom. I think we can really help on that.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Denny. So we've got already, a practitioner developing solutions, a connector helping to connect solutions to opportunities. Veronica, I'll move over to you next. Tell me a little bit about kind of your role in the entrepreneurial space.
Hey, Tom and team at RIoT, thank you for always seeing the value of local government in these conversations. So I'm very fortunate in working for the city of Raleigh. Raleigh is proud to see itself as an entrepreneurial local government, something that some folks think those two don't even go together. So fabulous that we see that differently here. I've been in my role about 2 years now. I actually moved, Denny, I was in Washington, D.C. for 6 years before coming here. And what attracted me to Raleigh is everything that's so great about our community, but local government in particular, being very engaged with the community and have a high regard for entrepreneurship. So I'm also a small business owner. In total, my tiny little firm, we have 10 commercial and residential units. So I feel like, you have to walk the walk a lot of times to really experience what your consumers are experiencing. So from a property owner and manager perspective, this time is hitting very close to home. As a director of economic development for the city of Raleigh, our vision is prosperity for all. And then how we get there is implementing an equitable economic development framework and strengthening the 13 building blocks of economic mobility across our region. So while we are focused on the people and the businesses of Raleigh, we all know that business, commerce, trade, innovation knows no geographic boundaries. So we practice in that regional sense, knowing that we're part of the state, national, and global effort. I'll pause there for the introduction and then really drill into later, like how we do that.
Great, thank you very much. And then Rachel Newberry kind of rounds out the panel and is the lead of Mission R. So Rachel, introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks, Tom. And thanks for everyone for tuning in today. My name is Rachel Newberry. I'm the program director at RIoT. My background is in building innovation support structures, and most specifically building programs for entrepreneurs to support the development of their new solutions. Before I was at RIoT, I worked at a behavioral science research lab at Duke University. There I built a behavioral science focused startup program where we helped entrepreneurs to integrate research insights to their solutions. And today I run innovation programs at RIoT. Most specifically, that is our startup accelerator program for early stage companies in the IoT space. And we also have some curriculum to support small business and Main Street business. And today I'm really excited to talk to you all about Mission R, our new innovation support program in light of our current global crisis. So thanks for being here.
All right, well, thank you, Rachel. So really the goal out of this discussion, or at least our goals, is to explore this opportunity for innovators to solve problems. We're all working from home right now. We're in different places. But there is still an opportunity to come together, to do new things, to make a difference. Luke, you are doing this. You started VitalFlo before we had any concept of COVID-19, but very quickly have seen how the framework that your small business has developed around a specific area of health can directly be applied to this crisis. So maybe give our audience a little bit more depth in who VitalFlo is, what you do, and specifically what pivots you've made recently.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are very focused on respiratory health, and that obviously comes to bear in a moment where we have this wide-ranging and very aggressive respiratory infection circling the globe. What we focus on with our core technology is, one, pulling data that doctors need to make better clinical decisions back for those clinicians, collecting it remotely. So there's a couple ways that plays in for our current focus on chronic health, chronic respiratory health, with a focus on asthma, but also could come to bear specifically with COVID-19 as well. For asthma, there's a lot of things in the air that can trigger an attack, and that includes particulate in the air. It could even be ozone, pollen, for example. All these things can be triggers of asthma attacks. So we're watching for that passively in the background and pulling that back forward for clinical teams. And we augment that with self-reported symptoms that patients answer a quick survey, as well as direct lung function measurement, all of which can be collected from a patient in their home. And it's the in their home, this remote piece, that actually becomes very interesting and hopefully useful in the current COVID-19 crisis. The way that we're approaching this is, we know that primary care providers are some of the most affected by this, especially small independent practices. And these practices are getting hit from a lot of different angles. One of those is obviously the discussion around personal protective equipment, or PPE. Every time that you have a visit between a healthcare staff member and a patient, they are consuming PPE, which we've been shorthanded on to date in the crisis. So the more of these engagements that we can shift from being face-to-face and in person to being remote and via telehealth or remote physiologic monitoring, like what we provide, the more PPE we can conserve, the more we can protect our frontline healthcare workers and protect our patients. The other side of this equation is that chronic patients, including chronic respiratory patients, are some of the most at risk in the current crisis of developing severe COVID-19 symptoms. So that means that if you are to get infected by this bug, if you have some pre-existing conditions or chronic conditions, you're more likely to be the folks that are in trouble. So we're obviously very concerned about that, focused on a chronic respiratory disease population. And we want to make sure that our population has the opportunity to get the care they need, make sure that their asthma and their COPD is still taken care of, but keeping them as much as possible out of the areas where they might get that infection. And that unfortunately includes our healthcare system right now. So the more that we can enable this remote monitoring, the better. So part of how we've stepped into this is to help our primary care providers, where we want to focus on helping them deliver better, faster, and safer care through these remote monitoring solutions. And one thing that we can do and have announced that we're doing to help is waiving our platform fees for the VitalFlo Health platform. And this includes the patient symptom surveys as well as the clinical decision support. We're not able to provide any of the hardware for free because it's not ours. We use third-party hardware systems across the board. But there's a lot of data that can be collected for primary care providers just through those symptom surveys, make sure that their patients are doing okay without requiring that in-person visit. But if an in-person visit is needed, we can basically, physicians can make that call based on real information and real up-to-the-minute monitoring. So that's how we're helping to address this, and I'll drop a link to our announcement of that into the chat here. If there's any other questions about that, I'll direct people there.
Thanks. So can we come back to that in a moment? But Veronica, I'll look over to you next. This isn't only a health, and so while it's incredible to see organizations like they're offering up data, useful data and intelligence for free, they're enabling this promise of Internet of Things, data collection from anywhere, and how do you then automate and create really smart solutions? Here's a case where that's really coming true, which is great. But outside of the health space, you mentioned you're a small business owner. This is a challenge for everyone. Start by helping us understand in kind of regular, how does the city of Raleigh work with small businesses, and what changes are you seeing now?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah. So in regular times, we're doing what we do now. We're just pivoting with the subject matter, quite honestly. So in regular times, our office is built, really focused in two areas. We just recently built our community economic development initiative or effort side of the house, if you would. And that's how we live into the equitable economic development commitment and practice. And we've always had a traditional economic development arm, and that, good news, folks. Businesses, projects are still coming our way. They're still coming to North Carolina through Denny and his colleagues at the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina. Folks are still interested in being in Raleigh and coming to Raleigh. So there's that kind of parallel world. How do we attract, retain, and help businesses expand? And we're still doing that. In this current time, the community economic development is the one that's really changing its response to what businesses tell us they need. We are always providing education. We're resource connectors. We manage a really impressive grants program. We're a megaphone partner. We help lift up the great things that our businesses are doing. We help folks find each other, lift up specials, or lift up when business alliances have some wonderful things going on, like our festivals or anything that drives the economy. We're often convening or hosting webinars or educational technical assistance sessions. We're a sponsor. We help sponsor lots of events around the city and the area. And then we manage or work with, not manage, we work with 13 economic development alliances across the city of Raleigh. So that's what we do all the time. Now, how that looks today is those 13 alliances have a membership base that's really trying to navigate this time. So the SBA is more important in our world today. What is a small business administration doing for small businesses? And the CARES Act being over an 800-page document, we have a team looking through that, pulling out the economic development impacts, repackaging it in a manageable and understandable format, and then sharing that back out with partners that we all can help small businesses understand. How do you react? Where are the grant applications? When the system shuts down, is it a platform issue or is the operator's system overloaded? So I mean, literally TA or troubleshooting at a very micro level. So it's important for us to always have an ear to the ground when things are going well. What's going well? But when things need to change, how do we as an organization and local government change with that? Some of the things that the city has done is we were one of the first cities to implement curbside pickup the moment when we knew restaurants were more than likely going to have to close or do businesses differently. We immediately worked with our parking department and had a plan in place. And that is how you saw in Raleigh, curbside pickup implemented so quickly. And in fact, we've had a couple of national outlets contact us to learn how we did that. We've seen restaurants pivot themselves. And they're sort of building out pickup processes where they weren't really a takeout restaurant or a pickup restaurant. Those folks are really thinking through how do we move in this time. And I thought some pretty innovative or creative approaches with some really where restaurants have now opened a market within their restaurant because markets and food shops can be open. So the restaurants are making themselves essential in creating more of an inventory for folks to fill the needs that folks are having right now. And then we've got some great philanthropy, or I should say great innovation, often motivated by philanthropy. And folks like Andrew Ullum, the owner and chef over at Union Special Bakery, they implemented a pay it forward program where at the end of your bill, if you want to add $5, that will go to pay for a loaf of bread that will then be redistributed to area churches, nonprofits, and the food bank. And today, as of this morning, I just talked to Andrew this morning, they have delivered over 900 loaves of bread. So anything the city can do to help businesses be successful in this time. Our grants program, we hit pause on the 2 upcoming grant cycles because we have a Building Up Fit grant and an Impact Partner grant. And businesses are saying, we're probably not going to do upfits right now. What we need is bridge funding. We need grants. We don't need yet another loan. So we're doing an assessment right now of the funding we do have and trying to reallocate it in a new tool or a new venue that meets the needs of our businesses today.
Yeah. And I love how many examples already of this kind of innovation and entrepreneurship that you bring forward, and nice to see, how well at a city level that's being not just accepted, but immediately rolled out. Denny, you have a similar kind of role, but at the state level, how similar or different is the approach at the state as what Veronica described in the city?
I think there are some similarities, but because of the nature of the federal government, there are some major differences. Let me give you a couple examples. First of all, if you're an entrepreneur like Luke, you have a great technology. You need to know, number one, what's the government looking for? And number two, who do you contact in the government to get your technology in front of them? And right now, with the size of the federal government, even if you just take the Army, there are at least 6 different organizations in the Army for innovation. And then if you want to do a normal type of acquisition, there's probably about 22, and that's just in one service. So if you don't know where to go, you're not going to be able to make any money or sell your product. And that's what DEFTECH and kind of what we do with EDPNC, how we work together, We help identify those opportunities and match them to businesses in North Carolina that might have a technology that they would be interested in. So we do all the research, we do the outreach, we maintain relationships with all of these government outreach offices, and then we connect them with you. And I'll give you an example. Just on the COVID-19 opportunities in the last couple of weeks, we put out and we've distributed to the DEFTECH network, because we don't spam everybody, only if you're signed up, and it's a free service on deftech.nc.gov. And I know, Tom, you're on it. We've identified opportunities from the Army Application Lab, the Medical Technology Enterprise Consortium, the National Science Foundation, the Defense Logistics Agency, and the Silicon Valley Innovation Program, just looking for COVID-related technologies or solutions from industry. And they want them, and they want them now. We also sponsored and put out something called a hack event. And they were looking for ventilators, Luke. And anybody that could make a cheaper ventilator, it would not need to be FDA approved. We work with UNC Chapel Hill, UNC Charlotte, Duke, Pumpkin Inc. out of California, the Biomedical Innovation up at the First Flight, APS Innovation Solutions. And we had people call from California, Arizona, Virginia, and South Carolina. And we helped them put together a team who then submitted a 5-page paper on what they could do. And we're waiting for the down select on that. So these are the type of things that we try to do. We work with the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, Department of Defense, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the type of things that we try to do, but it's a different model, and it's not commercial. They must follow the federal acquisition reg. There's something called another transaction authority, and you have to know how to navigate those waters, and that's a service that we provide. The other thing that's growing right now for those on the call, anybody's into cybersecurity. Everybody working from home now. There's real concern with different things that we talk about online, all the work we're doing online, that information getting out to people who shouldn't have it, especially in the Department of Defense realm, and even with the COVID-19. So the whole idea of cybersecurity, cyber hygiene is becoming a major concern for our government. And I think that's it.
And for folks that haven't worked with Denny, he walks the talk about simplifying all these processes down to just a 5-page paper or some brief. It wasn't a few hours after this 800-page document that Veronica mentioned was released that he had it boiled down to the important points and out to the community. So, great job in helping people get what otherwise is a really complex system. We haven't heard from you yet. A healthy economy is resiliency in time of crisis. We've heard from Veronica already a few interesting things that are happening in the entrepreneurial space, but what's your view of the entrepreneurial community, and are there examples you can share of where people are stepping up and doing creative things?
Absolutely, Tom. So I think one of the really hopeful things that we've seen come out of this crisis thus far is people stepping up to use their existing capabilities or their innovative ideas to support the critical needs in our community. Entrepreneurship is always about filling needs, and right now the most critical needs out there are COVID-19 related, and we're seeing entrepreneurs not only adapt their existing offerings to the crisis, but stepping up in new ways. So I have to mention our partners at Clario, Jim Smith in particular, and a startup that we support called Ava Labs, run by Stephen Guido and Zach Fernside. Clario and Ava Labs have both started 3D printing face masks to meet some of the PPE shortages in healthcare that we're seeing. So right now they're 3D printing around the clock. They're delivering to the VA in both Durham and Fayetteville. And they're also soliciting other people to join the effort. So anyone that has 3D printing capabilities, they have put out a call to action to our RIoT ecosystem for folks to jump in and start producing those face masks as well. So that's been one really cool thing, just to see, existing technical capabilities in our ecosystem starting to support the needs that are coming out of this global healthcare crisis at a local level. So that's a fantastic example. A couple other things come to mind. Locally, again, Durham Distillery started making and donating a sanitizing solution for hospitality workers. And that was back in the beginning of March, when a lot of restaurants were still doing their best to operate, but of course, keep their environments as healthy and safe for their consumers. And then at a kind of larger scale level, I've seen Aaron Patzer, the Duke alum and founder of Mint. He launched a COVID-19 triage tool in collaboration with Emory University. So we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses kind of step up to the plate and provide needs that exist, just based on their existing capacity and capability to produce new solutions.
Great. And some of these, maybe the PPE one that you mentioned first, what's if you're interested in joining the effort for them to get engaged?
Yeah, I would say reach out to Jim Smith and Stephen Guido and Zach Fernside. I can provide their email addresses right here in our chat window momentarily. They're currently our local partners that are leading that effort, and they can give you information to get involved. Right now, the design for the face mask is open source. So if anyone does have 3D printing capabilities, it would be really easy for you to contribute.
Great. And I'll share just a couple other things I'm aware of. But before I do, I'll remind all the audience, if you have comments, you have questions, things like that, feel free to check the window. We'll address them as they come up in this discussion. I'm aware of a company in North Carolina that has volunteered to help repair respirators. There's actually a fair number of respirators that are in existence, but at some point in the past had broken down, but still aren't repaired. And so they're trying to collect those in and address that particular shortage that's been heard. I was just off of a call right before this with a company that provides solutions in the pest control industry, automating food safety. It's critical right now to secure, food and various other kinds of supply lines to support society and things that had been done through a lot of manual operations and things that could bring contaminations into something as critical as the food supply. When you can automate those with IoT technologies and things, that creates an incredible efficiency, but also quality assurance and kind of safety assurance into that supply chain. So there are things happening across lots of different areas, and it's just really, really exciting. On the entrepreneurial side, though, Luke, startup companies, by nature of being early stage, sometimes don't know where the next paycheck is coming from. It can be very stressful. You throw on a situation like this that adds another layer of complexity. How has that affected you or other startups that you're familiar with? How have you had to based on this particular situation?
Yeah, thanks. The first thing I would want to acknowledge is that kind of being in the startup space, there's a lot of different types of companies that fall into that category. And we happen to fit into the category of being a venture-backed style of startup company, which is going to behave and encounter a lot of different types of market conditions than, say, a standard small business. So just for context, that's kind of where we sit. We also have the good fortune and privilege of having won some grant funding from the National Science Foundation, which gives us a little bit of a back burner type cushion on the funding side. I know from my peers in the ecosystem that it's a pretty tough time right now, especially with respect to funding access, customer access. We also happen to be in the medical space, which is sort of one of the markets that is not reacting as if it just dropped into a deep recession. So we have a lot of things going for us that I just want to acknowledge that other companies might not. The biggest thing I've heard in the conversation is this discussion around basically conserving cash, looking for opportunities to slow burn rates and survive kind of on as little resources as possible. The approach that we've taken, because we have sort of this fortunate position, is that we really want to lean in because we can, and that's why we're able to do something like waive platform fees at a time when everyone else is cutting costs and doing everything they can to boost revenue. We're just trying to get our product out there where it can help. But that's basically a privileged position because we have some National Science Foundation backing. What I have experienced is we were right in the middle of a fundraise. As I mentioned, we're a venture-backed style of startup, and that has slowed down dramatically. I know the venture markets are reassessing. We're in the middle of this very big boom in VC and angel investing, kind of going all the way through 2019. I can tell you from direct experience that has shifted quite a bit. I expect with the VC funds that have already closed their own raises, that they will still need to deploy that capital. But right now, they are definitely looking around at their current portfolio and seeing who might need shored up before investing in new opportunities. For the angels, angel investors around the globe just took at least a 20% hit to their net worth based on the market. So I know that has also slowed down, especially if it's in a market that is more challenging to see short-term customer growth. So it's a very challenging time. What I can say is there's been a great motion toward other opportunities for entrepreneurs in terms of grant funding, especially if you have something that can help address the COVID-19 crisis. We've seen the National Science Foundation putting out SBIRs that are specific to COVID-19. We've definitely seen movement from the NIH, as you might expect as well, and a lot of interest from some of the other agencies, especially the DoD, which I'm sure Denny can address more directly. So we've been looking quite a bit at that for funding opportunities, as well as growing our customer base. But we happen to be in a market that works because we are on the medical side. It's a challenging time. I would definitely love to hear some more experiences from the listeners, if they are involved with small business or startups, kind of what their experience has been in this time as well.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. So, Veronica and Denny, Luke mentioned there are clear and easily identifiable opportunities kind of in the healthcare side, but there's an awful lot of need in supporting small business, supporting startups, supporting entrepreneurs, and just supporting other industries that have been so profoundly impacted. What are new problems that this crisis has kind of uncovered that maybe weren't things that we thought so much about? What kind of help there isn't a clear answer, that are things that maybe the entrepreneurial community could start? I know that's a little bit of an open-ended question, but Veronica, maybe I'll start with you.
Thanks, Tom. So you never know how complicated a path is until you need to take it. I want to be very respectful of our colleagues at the SBA, and they've received an infusion of funds like never seen before. So I'm sure their infrastructure is reeling with this new funding and having to figure it out quickly. But there have been some painful snafus at the local level. I'm a social worker and a public administrator, and a social worker is most known to be a systems entrepreneur. But how do we help systems be entrepreneurial and ideally ahead of a crisis? For folks who've had to navigate complicated systems, man, if someone could lend some clarity of thinking and process and building when folks are running fast in crisis and having to navigate a complicated system. I feel like from a child to I'm grown now, those government systems are still as complicated and tight and unflexible as they've always been. So that's a pain point that we've not had to experience to this degree until the last few weeks. Something else we're discovering is who sees themselves as small businesses. A real tangible example, home-based childcare centers see themselves as childcare providers, and that's the service that they provide. At the same time, many are micro businesses or home-based businesses. So the owners and founders of these most critical service provision didn't know how to respond when parents are now working from home and choosing to keep their kids at home. As I understand it, in North Carolina, if your child care center is not an educational, or there's a certain designation, an education-based center, you don't fall necessarily under the Department of Education or some of the HHS Health and Human Service funding, but rather you're kind of out in the cold as that small business. But when someone doesn't realize that they're actually that small business, they don't know how to pivot to see themselves in the CARES Act, or see themselves as a small business or a home-based business. So we are working with Wake County Smart Start to make sure our child care providers at any level have the support they need to stay fully intact, because once we go on the other side of this and our healthcare and frontline workers, folks need child care, and we could find ourselves in a child care crisis if we are not careful in how this is navigated, and if a whole slew or whole stable of child care providers go under or don't have the support they need, we're going to add on yet another crisis to our immediately frontline workers. And then long term, when we start coming out of this, that will be something else we'll have to face. So anyone who can lend some good thinking in systems, how to help home-based and microservices see themselves as businesses, and get ahead of and get their heads in that thinking, are some things that we've discovered. And of course, kind of that very local feeling. Now is the time that folks are asking, why do I not have an economic development alliance? We have 12 or 13 across the city, but when you map those alliances, many of them are tied to a real specific geography, like Hillsborough Street Alliance or Downtown Raleigh Alliance. We got folks everywhere. Cameron Village has an alliance. But when you start looking in other areas in a time of crisis, a lot of businesses don't know who to turn to. But the institutions have been here. We've been here the whole time saying, so creating a better communication and network between the institutions or the anchor agencies and the actual consumers that need those anchor agencies, even if the constituents didn't see that they had that need. So the need for collaboration, partnership, information is more clear now than ever.
Thanks. That's interesting. So, these are really complex systems. And communication understanding is critical, and this helps to uncover that maybe we didn't know what we thought we knew, or in some areas maybe we're overconfident or blind to things. But what I was most kind of taken by your response is that response phase right now of this crisis, but then there's going to be a recovery after, and things that we do in response are going to impact recovery, like making sure that all those folks that thought of themselves as child care providers, once all the children start coming back out of the homes and people go back and so on. There's also a much more forward-looking piece in terms of prediction and prevention that wish we had more of that before this started, but this unfortunately is not going to be the last crisis that we're ever faced with in our human history. And so how do we better predict and prevent? So there's lots of opportunities for innovation kind of in the moment, recovering from the moment, and preparing for the next thing. Denny, is there anything that you'd like to add kind of around new problems have surfaced and what are maybe some key focus areas you're trying to solve?
Yeah, Tom, thanks. From a federal government perspective, I think we're already learning some lessons, but what we end up doing about them still remains to be seen. The first lesson that I think that we need to understand for businesses that are applicable, the federal government does have money and they're spending it. Contracting has not stopped because there's something called critical infrastructure that I think that the country's forgotten about that must continue on regardless of this crisis. And part of that critical infrastructure is the supply chain required to continue to support the Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security. So, for example, in Texas, the daycare centers for the children, they decide who gets to go in there based on the parents' jobs. And if you're in critical infrastructure, you give priority over, for example, a teacher who can teach from home. We need to think through all of that. Here are the problems that are coming as a result of this. First of all, since the federal government is still putting out a lot of opportunities and they're asking for ideas as to how to solve these crises, what technology do you have? How to respond to the diagnosis, the care, the protection of all the people affected by this. They're getting all types of information into them, all these different websites. They're overwhelmed. They can't manage the inflow of ideas and proposals that they're getting. So is that because we don't have a system set up that could accept these ideas early on, have them cataloged so that they could very quickly be searched for and looked at or evaluated rather than getting this big influx? The other thing is critical infrastructure support. What is critical infrastructure? Who qualifies, who doesn't? It's defined by federal regulation in the CISA reg, but even in our own state, if you think you're critical infrastructure, you have to apply to the Emergency Ops Center to get dispensation from not staying at home. So we kind of have to come to grips with that. Then the final thing is supply chain. The more you read, the more you understand, we are very dependent on foreign parts and foreign stuff, even foreign medicines for what we have. We need to start looking as this thing winds down and we start going ahead of establishing somewhat of interdependence of our own supply chain without regard to the rest of the world. And I think that these are going to be things that people are going to be thinking about now, and companies who can get ahead of it will have opportunities once we beat this COVID-19 situation.
Cool. Thanks, Denny. I'll remind people for the announcements page to the deftech.nc site if you want to see. Denny regularly pushes out some new opportunities, new asks, things that have funding behind them in terms of solutions that are being sought out. Rachel, we've heard about a few opportunities launching a new program called Mission R. Tell us what that is and what you need and how people can get involved.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so RIoT is launching Mission R. We are extremely excited about this initiative, and ultimately this is our response to the current global health crisis and the resulting economic challenges. So COVID-19, as we all know, has sort of turned our world upside down. It's created universal challenges in our day-to-day lives, certainly, and will also create long-term challenges in our healthcare systems and the economy and so on. The good news is that the scale of COVID-19 related challenges is certainly massive, but the opportunities for innovation are proportionally massive. So Mission R is our way to capture these opportunities and to support their development. So what we're doing is we're putting out a call for solutions that address COVID-19 related challenges. We're looking for a huge variety of ideas. So we're certainly looking for moonshot innovation concepts that support population health initiatives, but we're also looking for ideas around how to boost the economy in times of crisis. This certainly includes how we can sustain startups and small businesses during economic recession. And then we're also just looking broadly for technologies that address this post-pandemic reality that we now live in. These can be inventive ways to solve global or community-centric challenges at the policy level, related to communications, related to healthcare. So really, this is a broad call for technology solutions. So you see here, this is our layout of the Mission R program. I'll run through this briefly, and we will certainly open up for questions here soon. So today we are launching Mission R and launching our calls for submissions. There are a couple ways to submit. We have created a Mission R portal that is a really quick Google form where you can provide new ideas for innovation related to COVID-19 challenges. And then we're also looking for existing startups that have technologies that are applicable to COVID-19 related challenges. So new ideas can be submitted through the Mission R portal. Existing startups can apply to RAP. So we've got an existing RIoT Accelerator program application up on our site. And that's a great way for startups to tell us what they're working on and give us a big picture of their technology and their business model. We will open those portals up for innovation concepts for the next week. So the deadline for submissions is Thursday, April 9th. At that point, we will do a bit of vetting with the RIoT team and others that we're bringing in to support this. And our next virtual webinar will be a Top Ideas pitch event. That is scheduled for Thursday, April 16th, 2 weeks from now. After we select Mission R teams, we will do some work to pull teams together around new concepts that are not fully formed startups, but are innovation ideas that we need to source teams around. And ultimately, we'll announce our Mission R teams on May 4th. And those teams from there will then participate in our summer cohort of the RIoT Accelerator program. So we'll use the Accelerator program to develop out the concepts that come out of the Mission R portals. And at the end of the RIoT Accelerator program in August, we always do a big pitch night. Mission R teams will pitch at that event, and we do have some cash prize money at the end. We also do have some capital committed up front to provide stipends to these teams as they enter into the RIoT Accelerator program. So broadly, that's the timeline for this Mission R program. We have a variety of stakeholders in our ecosystem, and we're looking for everyone to get involved. So I'll run through a couple of examples. Of course, we're looking for idea creators, just anyone that has an innovation concept to submit your ideas. Startups, if you have an application that is relevant to this post-pandemic reality, please submit what you're working on to the RIoT Accelerator program application. Entrepreneurs, if we have folks that are interested in getting involved in supporting a Mission R project, we want to hear from you. Tell us what your skill set is, what your interests are, and we want to be able to match you to a team to develop these innovation concepts. And then, of course, we have many tech companies in our ecosystem. We're looking for folks to provide financial sponsorship to this program to support developing these solutions. And we're also looking for tech companies to provide technical resources. So technology platforms or donating any kind of technical resources would really support pushing these projects forward. And of course, we have city and healthcare leaders such as Veronica and Denny and others. If you have more ideas on just challenges you would like to see addressed, we would love to hear from you. The childcare concept or the navigating complex systems that Veronica mentioned, there's certainly a place for us to be an aggregation point for those challenges, and we can support sourcing innovation teams around these challenges that we're facing today. So I will pause there, and Caroline, I believe, has already seen some questions come through on the chat. Also, feel free to go ahead and submit more questions, and we would like to open the floor now for any questions or thoughts around RIoT's new Mission R project.
Or analysts. So,
Absolutely.
Certainly we'll take mission questions, but for anyone on the panel, I'm already seeing some ideas and some solutions people are working on come across the chat window, which is really exciting. I would ask, please go ahead and submit those ideas through the portal that Rachel talked about. That'll help us get it in front of the right eyes. And I'll make one kind of final emphasis on part of the is to provide some funding to build out prototypes, to support startups that maybe aren't in the fortunate position that Luke's team is in, that could use some cash in the short term. The amount that we're going to be able to give out to the community is going to be largely dependent on how much we raise. We already have some corporate partners and some private foundation partners and others that have contributed financially to this. But if your organization is able to support this in some way, we would love to talk to you about that. Help expand your reach across the 9,000 people in our community, the 1,300 companies that have worked with us over the last several years in our ecosystem. Kind of get exposure to your products and services, but most importantly, to just be part of the solution. We certainly, the purpose of this call isn't for it to be a sales pitch, but we very much would like to bring more partners in and then be able to provide more out to the entrepreneur community. But with that, Caroline, do we have some questions that you want to pose?
Thank you, Tom. Yes, I have a question here from Pavani. This one is directed towards Veronica. How is the Economic Development Office collecting and processing concerns that stakeholders in the business community have at this time?
Thank you for the question. I did post our website there in the chat box. So a few ways. On March 16th, the week before March 16th, we were in, which seems like such a long time ago, we're in oh crap, this is rolling down the hill fast. I remember that Friday, so March 16th was a Monday. On that Friday, my team and I got together and we said, we should at least build a website. Like right now, at least create a portal for folks to talk to us. Over the weekend, things got really stressful. So Monday, I think around Sunday, Monday, I invited anyone who could make it to a listening session at City Hall. Of course, we were practicing social distancing, so we limited the in-person to 40, but we worked with Shop Local Raleigh and the City of Raleigh's RTN, our own technology, in-house technology, to so folks could live stream and join us and pose questions, and just as we're doing now. We had over 100 small businesses either in the room or plugged in with us. And Jennifer was Shop Local Raleigh, like reading the questions, just like we're doing today. So we realized, oh crap, like this is affecting a lot of people really quickly. So since that time, the next week, so we just made sure our website has the built-in, like, here's the resources. The next week we sent out a communication to folks saying, here's the newest, here's what we think is happening, here's what we're understanding. And then the following week, which was this week actually, we hosted our first small business TA webinar. And this week's topic, we heard from 3 local businesses who have jumped in and are navigating the SBA and other small business funding arms or venues, including the Golden Leaf Foundation's work with the North Carolina Rural Center and rolling out their $15 million small business loan program. All of those touch points, we asked for feedback. We've just, sadly, this week built the question box, so you can actually leave a question on our site. But our partners at Wake County Economic Development, when they set up their resource page, they built in a question and answer platform. So we're sharing among the economic development partners in our area questions we're receiving, as much real-time answers as we can share. And then, of course, us hosting the TA, we're probably going to move to weekly or every other week to continue that at least voice-to-voice touch with our small businesses.
Thank you,
Thank you
Veronica.
so much, Veronica. And then we also did have just an inquiry if any of the panelists are comfortable sharing their emails. We did have a few attendees looking to connect with you directly. So if you're comfortable, please share your email address in the chat box, or we can do that for you with your permission. The next question is from Cam. Is there a location where we can find all of these efforts in one place so we can read more? Also, a list of grants that are available for companies creating solutions for COVID-19, if there's a place for that.
This is Denny. I might be able to help a little bit with it. There's no one central location. We're trying to pull as much in as we can. The DEFTECH website has some, but it's more along the lines of other transaction authorities where they're looking for prototype ready things that they can invest in, pay you to build the prototype. You're looking at basic and applied research, primarily the SIBR process. Not so much, haven't seen a lot of that, but there are some on the DEFTECH website. Additionally, at the following website, there's a COVID-19 page on this website that we try to keep updated with all the federal COVID requests for proposals or requests for ideas. That website can be found at ncmbc.us. That's November, Charlie, Mike, Bravo, Charlie.us. You go there, just look for the COVID page, COVID-19 page. We try to keep that up to date. So that would be my recommendation for the start point for which to look. If you have any questions, you can give me a call.
On a local level, there's a really page that the Raleigh Chamber has put out. It may actually be also listed on the Economic Development Office page that Veronica described, but there's a lot of local resources there. For Mission R specifically, we have information on our website, ncriot.org, and we'll be adding more information very soon on our website as well. Any others, Caroline?
That's all that I saw. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to add them to the chat box.
Rachel, can you kind of outline again, what are the immediate next steps that folks should be, whether it's interested in submitting an idea, participating, what are the timelines and deadlines and things? I want to make sure that people really understand what that looks like.
Yes. So immediate next steps for Mission R would be to submit your ideas through the Mission R portal that you can find on our website. And then additionally, if you're an existing startup, please submit an application to the RIoT Accelerator program. And there's an opportunity in that form to give us some justification around how you're addressing a COVID-19 specific challenge. So you can find both of those portals on riot.org. The deadline for these submissions is Thursday, April 9th at 5 p.m. Eastern. And then the following week, Thursday, April 16th, during this live webinar slot, we are doing a live pitch of those innovation concepts that we get submitted through our Mission R portals.
That's great.
Rachel, I have one follow-up question to that from Andrew. It sounds like the Mission R call for proposals is very broad, but it's also RIoT. So could you please clarify that proposals can be outside of IoT solutions?
Absolutely. So we take a broad approach already to what is defined as IoT. We really work with a lot of varied technology solutions. So yes, this call for solutions under the Mission R initiative is very broad. We're open to hearing any and all sorts of concepts related to healthcare challenges, broader economic challenges, and so on, and addressed with technology or otherwise. So if you have any hesitation around if this fits for us, just submit and we'll reach out to you from there. We want to really leverage our broad network to put a variety of teams around these concepts And so we're leaving it intentionally broad to source as many ideas as we can.
All that is RIoT is kind of a connecting organization in the community, not just locally actually, but nationally and internationally. So if there are ideas that come in, we feel that there are even better resources to support them than what we might be able to do ourselves. We'll be happy to make individual connections to resources that may have specific expertise outside of where we do. But to Rachel's point, we think of IoT as a very, very broad kind of umbrella term for the data economy and how we're using in ways to create new value. Right. Karen, I think I did see another post about local grant opportunities. Luke Marshall commented that Ava Garland Consulting has aggregated a lot of local grant opportunities. So check her out. You can Google her if you're not seeing the screen, or you can go in the chat window and see the link. That's a great local organization, identifies opportunities, but also has strong experience in how do you draft the proposals and respond to increase actually getting funding through those vehicles. Thank you, Newt, for posting that. Okay. I want to thank everyone participating today. This has been a great audience and a fantastic panel. So thank you very much to the panel for participating. We'll let everyone go, but we're very hopeful to see everyone back here in the same time slot. Again, next week, we'll launch a page for that, where we can review a lot of the concepts and the ideas and things that were submitted, and hopefully start to solicit interest to participate and do team building around these and start to create real and meaningful solutions. So thank you very much to the community. I hope everyone remains healthy and safe and appropriately social distances and does all the things that we need to do to get through this. But we're going to get through this together. So thank you very much.